Africans Unite Committee for holding this summit during a very troubling juncture in the international politics of white supremacy. When Sister Simmons first approached me and asked what global action should take place to address our situation, my immediate response was reparations. The movement for global reparations is based in the philosophy of Pan-Africanism, to mount a unified force to garner what historically belongs to us. Reparations is not just a check. It's restoration of our dignity and personhood, revitalization of our educational and social institutions, provision of proper health care, employment, return of artifacts, into present exploitation through neo-colonialism on the continent, and freedom from fear. Reparations is all about Black lives. You can't talk about Black Lives Matter without talking about reparations. The result of the European onslaught on African people was division, subordination, and extinction. The case for reparations for the horrors of the transatlantic slave trade, slavery, segregation, and colonialism have yet to be addressed by the perpetrators who profited through unjust enrichment. Their unwarranted crimes have laid the foundation for present incomprehensible injustices. Racism is global, evidenced in the moral, physical, spiritual subjugation of African people throughout the diaspora. From Malawi to Mississippi, our conditions are the same, distinguished only by degrees and types of impoverishment. Annihilation of the race continues through COVID-19, massive incarceration, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, all illnesses directly related to our physical and mental states. I was first introduced to the concept of self-reparations in the Caribbean. Being African American, I had an initial visceral response, as it being reminiscent of self-help, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps mentality. But as I wrapped my mind around it, I realized it is a first step in achieving full reparations. To move into the future, it's imperative that we address our holistic state of health. Every morsel of food we put into our temples will either enhance, sustain, or destroy us. Blocking toxins from processed foods, unhealthy people, and our environment is a revolutionary act in and of itself. Secondly, we have to educate ourselves on our history to take control of the narrative. Our emphasis should not be on sensitizing others to our plight. That would take generations, and it is not our responsibility. We have to educate our own youth who are presently buying into misinformation. Technology and social media are on our side. There are numerous resources and multiple platforms available to us, but we have to ensure that we focus on a true African-centered education from organizations such as the African Heritage Studies Association, MKA Institute in Philadelphia, IKG in Washington, and ASALA. African descendants have not embraced reparations for two reasons. One, we don't know history. And two, we don't believe we deserve it. If you asked a Black person in 1860 if they thought they would be set free from slavery, they would have responded in the negative. Anyone with even a nodding acquaintance with slavery would endorse reparations. We are still suffering today from not post-traumatic slave syndrome, but ongoing trauma. The only difference between being forced to watch an African being quartered and gutted in 1850, castrated and hung from a tree in 1920, or being held in a chokehold until every breath of life is squeezed out of them in 2020 is time. If we don't confront the dire nature of our situations globally, future generations of Africans and African descendants will suffer as well. When we unite across the continents, we will be an awesome force to deal with. Everything we need to prosper is within us. The Honorable Marcus Garvey taught us that if we have to learn who we are and draw on that power to determine our destiny and fate, and I quote, "If we do not seriously reorganize ourselves as a people and face the world with a program of African nationalism, our days in civilization are numbered." End of quote. have to be politically astute and discern those forces using the issue of reparations as propaganda to divide us, such as African descendants of slaves, ADOS, as this group promotes distinction of Africans born in America from our family in the Caribbean and continental Africa in the U.S. movement for reparations. We are all the same. Our study of enslavement reveals our ancestors were transported and relocated throughout the world. African Americans need to pressure our representatives to support H.R. 40, a research bill, as we still do not know the full extent of the damage wrought from slavery. Our Caribbean family need to lobby their governments in the CARICOM Reparations Commission to step up pressure on European governments. For the first time, we have St. Vincent on the United Nations Security Council, as their Prime Minister, Ralph Gonsalves, is an ardent reparationist, having penned 2 books on the subject and hosted reparation conferences. We need to encourage them to push for a resolution in the General Assembly that removes time-barred or statute of limitations arguments from reparation lawsuits. Finally, we all can support organizations such as the National Coalition for Blacks for Reparations in America, IBW, and those groups throughout the world that include reparations in their portfolio, such as the Caribbean Pan-African Network, the Rastafari Network, the Extinction Rebellion Internationalist Solidarity Network in London, Diaspora Afrique in France, Global African Congress in Canada, South Africa, Namibia, Colombia, and others. As we investigate African revolts and rebellions historically and internationally, we see that it was the average person at the grassroots level that manifested change. We have before us today a global charge to move our generation forward, and this will take full mobilization and commitment to ourselves, our elders, and our ancestors. Thank you.
Thank you so much.